You think you know him. The pink dog, the funny scream, the one who's terrified of everything. But what if I told you the funny parts are just a mask? What if the real story of courage is not about a coward at all, but about a hero living through a nightmare that never, ever ends? We're gonna step into his world and see what life is truly like for Courage the Cowardly Dog. And trust me, it's not as simple as you think. What is up, everybody? Welcome back. We've all seen the show. We've all had a good laugh at Courage's expense. But when you really stop and look at it, what kind of existence is that? Living in the middle of nowhere with a kind old lady and a cranky old man, while your house is a magnet for every monster, alien, and weirdo in the universe. It's a perpetual, exhausting cycle of dread and heroism, and today, we're pulling back the curtain on it. In this video, we're not just watching the show, we're analyzing. We're getting into the psychological side of things to figure out what it's like to be Courage. We're gonna break down his bizarre life into 3 core points. First, the central, beautiful paradox of his character. The fact that his cowardice and his heroism are not 2 separate things, but 2 sides of the same coin. Second, the role of his home, that isolated farmhouse in nowhere, as an active force, a psychological vacuum that just attracts chaos. And third, we'll talk about the foundation of his whole being, a childhood trauma that makes him a prisoner of his own hypervigilance. And stay with me, because at the very end, we'll talk about why the show's creators made his life so hard and what the ultimate lesson is for all of us. Let's get into the first big idea, the central contradiction that makes Courage who he is. His name, Courage the Cowardly Dog. It sounds like a joke, doesn't it? He's a genuine coward. We see it in his screams, in his frantic movements, in the way he tries to run and hide from every little bit of danger. On the surface, the title feels like a cynical lie, but that's only half the story. The other half is a narrative of profound heroism. This little dog, despite his overwhelming fear, consistently goes to unbelievable lengths to protect his owners, Muriel and Eustace. He's a problem solver. He's incredibly clever and resourceful, using whatever he can find to outsmart and defeat monsters, ghosts, and aliens. He even has super strength, and you see it all the time when he's carrying Muriel and Eustace around with ease. This contradiction reveals a core truth about his life. The show's name isn't a lie at all. It's a statement that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. With every frantic, terrified scream, he follows up with a heroic act. He's not getting braver with each victory, because his fear is always there, a constant part of his personality. So why is he like this? Well, the answer goes back to his origins. He was just a little puppy when his parents were sent into outer space by a cruel veterinarian. He was abandoned, alone in an alleyway when Muriel found him. It was Muriel, that kind old woman, who named him Courage, saying that he must be so brave to be all by himself. That simple act of love and belief gave him a purpose. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. He was given a mantle to live up to, and that external love and belief is what gives him the strength to overcome his internal cowardice. He acts heroically not because he's fearless, but because he's terrified of losing the only family he has left. Now, let's get to the second point. The show's setting is as much a character as Courage himself. The Bag family farmhouse is in a fictional town called Nowhere. It's an isolated, arid, and empty place that serves as a kind of psychological vacuum. The show's whole look, with its minimalist backgrounds and jarring mixed media, makes you feel isolated and vulnerable just by watching. The emptiness of the world outside the farmhouse seems to be a physical manifestation of the internal state of its inhabitants. It reflects Eustace's emotional emptiness and Courage's constant anxiety. And here's the crazy thing about the setting. Because the farm is so isolated, the show suggests that much of what could be happening around the world is pushed to nowhere. This isn't just a random threat. It's a kind of ecological necessity. The villains are a natural consequence of the family seclusion. This makes the horror of Courage's life not just about the specific monsters he encounters, but about the fundamental vulnerability that comes with living in such a remote and undefended space. He can't run away because there's nowhere to go. But perhaps the most significant and realistic aspect of life in Nowhere is the show's deliberate refusal to give Courage a break. There's no catharsis. Unlike other cartoons where the problem is solved and normalcy is restored, Courage's episodes always end with him right back in the same environment, with the same abuse from Eustace and the same quiet threat of a new monster arriving. His normal is not peace, it's constant vulnerability. The story always resets. This is a bleak, but also a very real statement from the creators. They're saying that in life, some struggles are a permanent part of existence. You don't just overcome your fears in one big, heroic moment. True character is defined by how you respond to inescapable circumstances over and over again. Courage's heroism isn't a journey towards a better life. It's a constant battle, a reactive act of love and survival. Now, let's talk about the final and most important part of the puzzle. The psychological architecture of Courage's life is built on a foundation of childhood trauma. That violent, forced separation from his parents left him with a deep-seated, persistent fear of losing his new family, especially his adopted mother, Muriel. His fear is not a simple phobia. It's a complex response that makes him constantly anxious and on guard. This trauma makes him hypervigilant. He is always on guard, constantly looking for threats to prevent a catastrophe from happening. This can cause him to see danger where there is none and to react with paranoia and frantic desperation. And this anxiety is made even worse by the people around him. While the villains are a big part of it, the constant, recurring abuse from Eustace is a huge internal stressor. Eustace's verbal taunts, especially "stupid dog," are a direct echo of the abuse Eustace got from his own mother, who called him a stupid boy. This cycle of cruelty makes Courage's home feel like a place that's never completely safe. To make things worse, Courage is trapped in a lonely existence because he can't talk. His frantic attempts to warn Muriel and Eustace are always met with confusion or dismissal, so he ends up understanding dangers that no one else does. He can't even put his terror into words. This makes his heroism a silent, solitary burden. But in this chaos, Muriel's unconditional love is the one constant, the one anchor for Courage. She is his ideal mother. His frantic efforts to save her are not just because he's a loyal pet, but because he is deeply afraid of being abandoned once again, of having his only source of love taken away. Courage's life is a constant cycle of re-traumatization. He saves his family from one threat, and another appears, forcing him to relive the anxiety and helplessness of his past. His heroic acts are a coping mechanism, a necessary action to protect the one source of love and security he has found since his parents' disappearance. So, we've covered a lot. We've talked about the paradox of his name, the psychological vacuum of his isolated home, and the trauma that makes him so hyper-vigilant. But why? Why did the creators make a show that is so full of dread and has no catharsis? Why is it that the show always resets, with the same problems showing up again and again? The show's ultimate lesson is that some struggles are a permanent part of existence. Progress is a constant battle, not a guaranteed outcome. Courage's life, marked by its lack of a perfect solution and unending struggle, presents a powerful and realistic lesson. His heroism is not about some grand, sweeping victory. It's defined by the simple, repeated choice to face the things that scare you for the sake of those you love. It teaches us that fear is an acceptable, normal part of life. True character is not about the absence of fear, but about how you respond to inescapable circumstances. So, the next time you see Courage the Cowardly Dog, remember what's really happening. You're not just watching a cartoon about a scared dog. You're watching a deep, complex, and oddly realistic story about trauma, resilience, and unconditional love. You're watching a hero, not because he is fearless, but because he chooses to be brave even when he's terrified. And in the end, isn't that what we all have to do? If this video changed the way you look at this classic cartoon, let us know in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts on Courage and his incredibly tough life. And if you want to keep exploring the weirdest, most interesting parts of pop culture and storytelling, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.